experienced as individuals, because I think that's going to be very, very important for all of us, that we're able to share that information with our families, with our friends, and then of course those folks out there who have no idea what to do and how to better themselves as it relates to this experience as individuals, because I think that's going to be very, very important for all of us, that we're able to share that information with our families, with our friends, and of course those folks out there who have no idea. Okay, that's the rebroadcast from going live on YouTube. Give me just a second. I'll be live on Facebook. Then we'll go from there. If you're not a presenter, there are people who have the direct dial-in number. They're not presenters, but they'll be with us on Zoom. And so because of that, we want to make sure that they mute their phone when we're not specifically talking to them about this. Anything that you want to share is you can do it. The issue is that remember that we're live on Facebook and we are live on Zoom. We need to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. So y'all ready to go? Is everybody ready?
Yes.
All right. Well, Apostle Greenup, could you lead us in prayer? Then from that point, we're going to go ahead and kick this thing off.
Father, we
Amen. Well, Apostle, you went off, but we're going to go ahead and keep going. At this particular point, the very first question or comment that I would like to make is that I think everyone on here has been exposed to the coronavirus and has had a diagnosis as it relates to the coronavirus. I'm not sure, Miranda, if you've been exposed yet. But I know you have some research information that you will share with us, and I thank you for being on here for that. But at this point, talk to us about your exposure to the coronavirus. And here's why I want you to answer that. The first question is, you were exposed. How in the world it goes? Because I think most of us were wearing masks and things of that nature. So talk to me about specifically how you were exposed to this particular virus.
Anyone in particular?
Go ahead, Garrett. You go ahead.
All right, with what I do, thank you for the platform too. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to our community about this deadly and always changing, it seems to be always changing disease of COVID-19. I was exposed to it because I'm in entertainment. And so with me doing stand-up comedy, I travel a great deal. Well, of course, traveling was pretty much shut down, but that's the way I make 80% of my income. I needed it. And at the time, my hours were cut at work at the radio station. So I'm trying to take any show I can get. And I don't know. It was one of two places where I was exposed at. What I can say is that both of those places, only one other person ended up with COVID. And so I was at the Houston Improv helping a fellow comedian with his special. What he did not tell me at the time is that his wife had COVID. It was a secret, which is, I think, the biggest mistake that all of us make is in being shamed about catching this disease. When I got it, I immediately told everybody because it wasn't like a popular deal, but because I'm around so many people, I want you to know that you too can get it. And so being at the comedy club in Houston and then the one in Shreveport, I was only around a select few people. I use Lysol on the microphone. I'm sanitizing, wearing a mask. and it was due to me being out that I was exposed. So I'm not sure if I got it in Shreveport or if I got it in Houston. What I do know is that one of those persons who was there, their wife had it. He didn't tell us that she had it. And he said he was okay. He only told me after I made an announcement that I had it, that his wife was sick. And I think that's one of the first mistakes that we make, is being ashamed of telling people that we have this disease. It's not a death sentence. It doesn't make you ugly. It's not a scarlet letter. We need to share this information so that we can protect one another. And so I was exposed due to work.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Brother Webb, Apostle Gump.
I honestly don't know where I got exposed. The only places I was going at the time was work, the gym, and to the house. And then for a couple of weeks on the weekend, I was driving to Mobile to help out a pastor and work with his choir. But other than that, I can't tell you where I got it. I could have gotten it from the gym. I really don't have a whole lot of, but even when I'm at the gym, it's not like I'm high-fiving people. Again, I'm new in Birmingham, so I don't know anybody. So I work out by myself. And then I work at a gym where you have to, it's encouraged to wipe down your machines. So I could have gotten it at the gym. I could have possibly gotten it from somebody at work, but then again, the close contact at work isn't a lot. And then, I could have possibly gotten it, at the church that I was going to help out. But those are the places that I was at when I got sick.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Apostle Greenup, talk to us about. Apostle, you going out. You're going in and out, Apostle.
We haven't.
Okay. Let's see. I can hear you now.
It's okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Well,
You went out again, Apostle.
we have a problem here.
You can call in and mute your mic at home, and you can call into the line so that you could speak through your phone.
Okay. We'll look at it. Still.
Okay. All right. Just mute your. Yeah. I'll mute you this end, and if you call in, we'll let you in on that end so we can hear your voice on there. That'll work. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let me talk about my experience. I first of all do not know where I got infected, and when I started feeling the symptoms, back about 2 days, and the only I can remember going to was, Walmart, and it seems as if that could have been the place, but and that Walmart wasn't even here in our area. It was a Walmart about 60 miles away. So I'm not sure. And of course, if I was around somebody who had it, nobody fessed up. As you were saying, Derek, nobody said anything. And immediately, since I was at church on that particular Sunday, a message to the congregation, a text message, and say, hey, I tested positive on this particular day, and make sure if there's anybody else testing positive. But there is somebody else after me that I know that I was around that was that tested positive that said something. And I know there's some people that are out there who are saying, if I don't get tested, I don't have it. And so that's happening at that relate to that particular point, except when it comes to us here, at home. My wife, because she was around me, and I'm talking about the general public, no one said anything. But here at home, about 6 to 8 days later, my wife actually took the test, and then she tested positive. And we're thinking she was actually maybe positive when I was positive as it relates to that. But I want you to know that is, what people are experiencing as it relates to this, is that folks not going to tell the truth as it relates to that. So I want all of us to be aware of that. Apostle, you're in now. Go ahead and start, Apostle.
That's it. Hello.
We can hear you. Yes, sir.
You can hear me now? Okay, well, when I guess everybody's okay?
Yes.
Is it working? Got it.
You're good.
Okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I want to kind of share that we met there with Bishop Riley over 10 years ago at the very fact with the coronavirus over this year. Does it echo?
Yeah, the echo. Do you have Facebook or YouTube on?
It's your computer. Turn down the volume on your computer.
Better?
Yes, sir. It's better now. Yes.
Okay. Well, I just want to share the fact that going to church, people told me one of the elderly there had the coronavirus, and they didn't tell me. And so we went there to get the test, figure the nostril in your nose, and then I asked the nurse, I said, if I have it, then what? Said, well, there's no cure, no antidote, there's no remedy. Then me for 14 days to what? I said, well, then what? Am I going to die? I was just sitting there telling with that. I said, well, there's no cure. I'm sharing with Mr. Riley here. I told people Christ is the cure for the coronavirus, number one. I mean, people died of cancer, they died of heart attacks. So the coronavirus is the biggest reason why people can die. And I tell you, Christ is the cure for the coronavirus, because I believe that, number one, Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. The God given us victory over the virus and power over this plague. Where we still alive here today, and we see the very fact here, but yet they say people can die every 30 seconds. People are dying, and so we need to understand here now it's only the grace and the mercy of God that we still alive. So as believers, and I was telling the doctor, I'm not worried about dying. I've got eternal life. I'm ready to meet God. And so once you have the wisdom, take care of the mass, all of the wisdom to do that. But at the same time, if you're a believer, amen, that you're not worried about dying, because we're not believing we're going to hell, we're going to be in heaven. So once again, it's been a whole year now. I have the virus. Then it said that my wife does not have it, but she had all those symptoms that she does not have it. I had no symptoms at all. I had to over with my mother. Apple cider vinegar, doing exercise. So once again, at 65 years old now, no symptoms. God's allowed us, and we believe in I believe what the Word of God says. Number one, Christ can heal any sickness, disease, virus, plague. The key was fear. Most people are afraid of the fear of anything. Used to be cancer. Now it's the coronavirus. I think the biggest problem today is that fear that people are using because of the virus, because the doctors don't know, nurses don't know, so they're ignorant of that. So we're just thanking God here in the midst of this pandemic. Not only are we going to survive, we're going to thrive. Well, we still alive here today. We're in 2021. God's given us a whole new year. So I believe today that God's going to bind the spirit of fear, that God is alive. And God's saying here today, in the midst, think of our doctors and nurses, the therapists, whatever, But I believe that God is in control of this situation. Amen.
Thank you, Apostle, for that. Let's move forward. Here's what we want to do now is there are things that we've experienced. And one of those things that we experience is this from a mental standpoint. Explain to me what you went through from a mental standpoint as it relates to this. How did you deal with this issue of having the coronavirus? How did you deal with it? With one, people thinking that if they come close to you, they gonna die. Two, people not even wanting to call you because they think they're gonna get it over the phone. And three, I'm not talking about folks outside the family. I'm talking about folks inside the family. I'm talking about your relatives, your brothers, your sisters, your cousin, the people that you hung out with. How did you deal with that particular issue from that standpoint, being alone from a mental standpoint? How did you deal with that?
Well, personally, I think number one, the fact that, I love God. As a believer, there was no fear. God's not giving the spirit of fear, but the power, love, and a sound mind. And also the fact that, me and my wife, we're 65, I've been married for 44 years, preaching, all of that. So we were isolated in quarantine, and they said that you have it, but your wife don't have it. But she's coughing and do all the symptoms. And so number one, they're confused. And that's why they're licensed to practice. And thank God for them. And so I told my wife, now, if I've got it, you got it. Then, man, can I not touch you? We're not going to make love. I said, well, we just going to die and go to heaven. As a believer, number one, here we praying God for signs, wonders, miracles, healing, also grandma's remedy, whatever we need to do here. But the fear time that we need to understand, me personally, everybody might have the same perspective that I have. Wasn't afraid of dying because I had a stroke 8 years ago, so I should be dead. I've experienced that. So once again, as a believer, my personal testimony is, I said, baby, we're going to die making love. We're going to die loving God. Number one, we have to separate ourselves from our children, our grandchildren. But if we've got it, see, with number one, apostle, the pastor, if you got it, your wife don't got it, we're going to be safe with that as well. But at the same time, we didn't know that. We sitting there going to eat together. We watching TV, the sports, and we making love. So we're going to die. Thank God I'll meet you in paradise. Amen, Apostle.
Amen. All right. Okay. All right. Derek.
What a way to die. What a way to die.
Hey, Mr. Riley, listen, I was trying to keep my composure. But let me tell you something. The coronavirus can't take that brother down, but his Wi-Fi did. That's what I do know. He survived corona, but he can't survive his Wi-Fi. Come on, shut it down.
Yeah.
Secondly, all right, Mr. Riley, here's the thing. It is a lonely disease. It is a lonely disease. When you get it and you're not at the hospital, because I had to stay at home with mine. I don't have a wife, so I couldn't make love unless, it was just me there, like the Reverend, because clearly that helped with his. I didn't have that. Bishop, I'm looking to get a wife so that I therefore, anyway, it's a lonely disease, Reverend. When you have coronavirus mentally, of course, I'm not a scary person, but that's not everybody. You know what I mean? And so, yes, I'm a believer, but it's lonely. People do look at you funny, or whenever you're off of your quarantine and you go back out, people are like, oh, he had it. Well, I'm not afraid of what the coronavirus could have done. I live my life every day thanking God that I have another opportunity to be here. And if it is my last day, God, thank you for all the days that I've had, because I've had, a lot of people didn't get to where I'm at. I'm only
Right.
40, but it's a lot of people didn't make it here. So I was grateful. But in saying that, I made sure that I got out, got lots of sunlight. Vitamin D was very important. I made sure that I got in my vehicle and I drove out of town as much as I could, at least once a day. The reason I did that is so that I didn't go stir crazy just sitting in a room alone. Because at the time I was staying with my mother, hey, and it was like, you remember on the movie Soul Food where they used to take the uncle the food and they slide it to the door? That's how it felt. It's almost, and it's not that she was being cruel, but she had to protect herself.
Right.
My
Correct.
son, he has muscular dystrophy. The night before I found out that I was exposed, my son drank after me. I was afraid, because if he gets it, this could be deadly for him because of the disease that he has. So mentally, it did wear on me, but that was just because you're alone. When you're alone and you're going through this, I had one day where I felt like death, and people laughed at it, but the only thing I wanted to do was take a shower on that day, just so that if I died, I could die with a little dignity. Mentally, it was tough. It was a little tough on me, but I can't say that my faith wavered. It just, it was trying for me. Yeah. But clearly, the remedy is making love.
All right, come on. Brother William.
I will agree with Brother Keener when he said it's definitely a lonely disease. More specifically for me, it weighed on me mentally because I had just moved to Birmingham last January, and then I got COVID when it hit in March. Like when it first hit hard, I got it. So not only am I in a place where I don't know anybody outside of my colleagues, I'm also 7 hours away from my kids. I'm 7 hours away from family. So mentally it weighed on me because I'm by myself. And I'll say it weighed on me heavy mentally because I don't get sick, like at all. I don't go to the doctor. I rarely have colds. I stay active. I stay fit. I eat right. And I got sick. So mentally, it was just like, it don't matter like how good shape you're in. Don't matter if you're eating right. This right here, if it touches you and you get infected with it, like it can bring you down. And I had, I'll say I had mild symptoms. So the only thing that I really, and I know we'll get into that later, but the only thing that I had was I had like 101-degree fever for like 10 days straight. Wow. And I had body aches for like 10, 11 days straight. So mentally, again, for me, it was hard because you're in this place by yourself. You can't go out and get anything. People have to bring you stuff. So you feel alone and almost like a woe is me. And I had a couple of breakdowns, man. I got to thinking about my kids and I'm like, yo, like I don't get sick. So, I mean, I'm not saying I thought about, is this the end? But the way I felt, I mean, again, I don't get sick. I've never had the flu. I've never had a flu shot. So when people were like, oh, it just feels like you've had the flu, I'm like, I don't have a point of reference for that. So, so this is all new to me. So just all of that. And then dealing on top of, for me, it wasn't just the pandemic or just being sick. It was, I had just moved to Birmingham. I had made the tough decision to leave, my family, move away from my kids. So I'm dealing with, but I just moved. I'm already dealing with the fact that I can't see my kids as much as I want to. I'm away from family. This is new territory. I don't know anybody. And then on top of that, I got sick. So mentally for me, it was heavy because of not only being sick, but just moving and dealing with all of that, all of those challenges mentally that I had to face, just moving.
Mr. Robert, do you mind if I ask Robert Webb a question?
Yes. Go ahead.
Robert?
Yes.
Because your mic is off. I wanted it on so you can. There you go. All right. So, Robert, you're not married though, right?
I'm not.
See, that was me and Robert's problem. Bishop Greenup got this gear. Hey, Miranda, I want you to know you've done a great job by really not laughing, but I'm going to get you one of these times.
All right, let's Miranda.
Yes,
She's a medical researcher. She
Okay.
can give us some additional details in our family. And I wanted her to come on because Miranda, you've heard the stories that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard about how we were exposed. Some of us still don't know the rascal who gave it to us.
Right.
And then the pain that we experienced by being alone.
Yeah.
I was like Apostle. I had my wife here, but my wife was food on the table and say, "Go on, get it." She going back in the room.
Right. So I would like to
just Miranda.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of give some basic background, my PhD is in microbiology and molecular genetics, and my area of expertise is RNA biology, which sort of makes the coronavirus in terms of the vaccination and how it works, and in certain aspects, the testing, how it works, it helps me to talk about that and at least express it in lay terms so that you understand it and you can ask questions. So I'm happy to take questions while I'm talking, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But I think one of the things that, you hear in the news, just to sort of go over a general background of coronavirus, is that it's an RNA virus that operates by hijacking your body's protein synthesis machinery to produce more of itself. Its target is the respiratory cells. So what that means is that, you are usually a person that contacts the coronavirus gets it in one of three ways, either by contact transmission, where you come into contact with somebody that's infected or has active or currently has a viral infection of coronavirus. Droplet transmission, which you probably heard, which is why they tell you to distance 6 feet, because typically droplets, which are larger respiratory droplets, can travel about 6 feet. So that's why you have this reference, anywhere between 4 and 6 feet, you want to stay apart from the person that's nearest you. And then the last is airborne transmission. And so when you talk about contact transmission, that's the most, a common way that people contract coronavirus. You usually come into contact with somebody that actively has the disease or the virus. They're actively replicating. And for those of you that may test negative initially, but later test positive or never test positive, it's simply because the test is designed to detect a certain amount of the virus. So if you have a low viral load, is what we call it. So viral load is just the amount of virus you're actively shedding. Then you will never test positive. So there are people that test negative, but are active carriers of the virus. So oftentimes what I tell people when they want to have family reunions or they want to have family gatherings and they say, we all got tested, we make sure that we're negative and we're good to go. The answer that I have for those people is no. Any one of you could still have the virus. And that is why when President Trump had a meeting in the Rose Garden, everyone in that meeting took the 15-minute test, right? And then right after that, Chris Christie got deathly ill. You had a lot of politicians that got the disease, and that's likely because somebody did not have a high enough viral load for detection. And so typically the reason why people get really, really sick and they sometimes succumb to the disease is for two reasons. First, your body, when you actually contract the disease, the disease attaches to lung cells. Right? The virus attaches to lung cells, and that spike protein, which is on the back of Bishop Riley's screen, that spike on the surface of the virus attaches to a receptor on the lung cells, a protein on the lung cells that it recognizes. And then that attachment allows the virus to then sort of fuse itself with your lung cells, the surface of your lung cells. So then when it fuses, the RNA that's inside of the virus enters inside of your cell. Because your body can't recognize the difference between your own RNA, which is just instructions to make proteins, and the viral RNA, what typically happens is your body's protein producing machinery makes viral RNA. And once those proteins are made, they assemble, make more virus. Eventually, your cells fill up with many viral particles and burst. Now, you can imagine that lung cells bursting dying is never a good thing. So what happens is when they burst, those new viral particles go on to invade surrounding lung cells. So that's the first way people die, essentially through, terrible, because of respiratory issues. The second way people pass away is that your own cells, your immune cells, recognize those lung cells that are infected with virus. That's what your immune system is designed to do. So your own immune cells, so the virus is bursting your lung cells, preventing you to, causing an inability for you to breathe or respirate. But your own immune system is attacking other cells that haven't yet lysed. So you have your body's immune system attacking cells that contain virus. You have an active viral infection that's lysing your cells. Eventually, you lose the ability of your lungs to function, and you eventually pass away if the infection becomes too severe. And so what I tell people is that, contact transmission is probably the most likely way that many of you contracted the disease, but droplet transmission is also a method where, particles from someone that has spoken, sneezed, coughed, talked, you inhale those. And then there's airborne transmission. Droplet and airborne transmission are a little bit more difficult to transmit the disease because it takes a lot of virus in that instance to cause disease. But usually airborne, very few people contract the disease by airborne, and that's when you have smaller, essentially droplets. So so in the Black community, because the federal government has a terrible history with treating the Black and Brown community the way that it should be treated, in the past, and in the case of the Brown community, in the present, at the border, there's a level of earned distrust. And so as a scientist and an RNA biologist, I was so elated when they created this new vaccine, because I understand how RNA biology works. It's actually a pretty clever vaccine. It essentially takes, so remember I told you the virus is a piece of RNA which encodes proteins, right? So essentially the vaccine the virus has, I think, a few dozen proteins that it encodes, that RNA. It takes one piece of that RNA that it has instructions to make just the spike protein. So when the vaccine, when you get the vaccination, that solution that's injected into your arm is RNA surrounded by cholesterol and fat. So it, just like the virus, fuses with your cells in your arm, makes the spike protein, which your body recognizes as foreign. So then your body uses that spike protein like a wanted poster. Your immune cells create memory cells, which allows your cells to have essentially a memory of this particular spike protein, so that when you are exposed to the real virus, your body's like, oh, here's the face, so destroy it before it can even cause infection. And so one of the things that I would say, is I was super excited because, they were able to, scientists, not the federal government, scientists were able to come up with a very effective vaccine. Now, I often hear people say, well, it was the federal government. They're trying to inject something that's going to alter my DNA. They're trying to inject me with some kind of, I don't know, tracking device. So my answer to those two sort of general, or the federal government planned this. So my answer to those three general sort of conspiracies are the following. For the conspiracy that the federal government wants to inject a tracking device, we have about 330 million people in the US. That is a very, very expensive way to track someone when they can just use your cell phone. The second thing is, I mean, you sign a lease, people know where you live, you lease a car, you guys use smart cars. I mean, if the government really wanted to track you, they could just use the devices that you use every single day. I mean, when I don't know about you, but when I get into my car automatically tells me without me programming it, how long it's gonna take me to get to work. So my car even knows where I'm going. So if the government truly wanted to track you, they could do that without inject. That's a very expensive way. The second thing is to the people that say that the government planned this. If it would take a serious coordinated effort for countries that don't even like each other to coordinate a pandemic that ultimately would hurt their own economies. One of the things if you study economics or anything related to sort of world function, this is not the way they wanted to plan something. This is probably not the way they would, which hurts everybody's pocketbooks. The third thing I hear is it's going to alter my, because nobody wants to hurt their own bottom line. The third thing is it's going to alter my my DNA. Well, first of all, RNA does not integrate into DNA. That's number one, which is why I think the vaccine is very clever. It does not integrate, RNA cannot integrate, mix, change DNA, number one. And that's definitely a fact as an RNA biologist. And number two, if a vaccine could do that, they would have cured so many genetic disorders yesterday because it would be a lucrative business. So I would tell you that. So I actually think that the vaccine is very cleverly done because RNA, that's why I studied, is very unstable. So it degrades within minutes. Oh, sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, because and I think I'm asking this question based upon probably ignorance. The fact that you said that you have a PhD, I think it's all right for us to ask these things.
Absolutely.
Because we don't get to talk all the time. So now, in saying that, this came about rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
This whole vaccination, when we've had several diseases that we've needed to get control of.
Right.
Why so fast with this one? And just on layman's side, I feel like, hey, this one gets to everybody and nobody is immune. So we got to attack this. Cancer, HIV, but this, because now, damn, all of us can get it and it's out of control. Why so quickly with this one?
I can answer your question. So let's take cancer first. So my postdoctoral training was in cancer biology. Worked at MD Anderson for 5 years. So I can answer your question in Houston. Yes, I'm a Houstonian. So,
me too. Thank you.
So in terms of cancer, there are, as you know, thousands of different types of cancer, right? So let's just take leukemia, right? It's a blood-borne cancer that usually is because there's a cell cycle defect, right? So the definition of cancer is the uncontrolled cell growth, right? So you cannot control the growth of a subset of cells in an environment, right? So that can be caused by many ways. First could be you dysregulate the cell cycle, which is the cycle. I don't know if you remember your high school biology. You know, you cause a disruption to the cell cycle, right? Where DNA, it divides, right? Or it duplicates, and then you have the split. So if you mess up any one of those processes in the cell cycle, it can result in cancer. That's one way. And remember, there are many different cell cycle checkpoints, things that are designed to stop cells, for example, you don't want the cells dividing until all the DNA has segregated to the ends, right? So any mistakes in that process can lead to cancer, uncontrolled cell growth or cancer. The second way you can get cancer is you mutate signaling molecules, right? So these are molecules that signal the cell to grow, right? So, and then you have mutations to oncosuppressors. These are genes in your cell, these are genes in your DNA that are responsible for preventing cancer. You have a mutation, and everybody knows about P53. Mutation in those, this is called the gatekeeper of the cell. It helps to regulate or, prevent cancer in the cell. You get a mutation. A lot of cancers are caused by mutations in P53. You mutate P53, boom, you have cancer. Go ahead.
I'm speaking for those of us that don't know, because I know it's a lot of people like me. I don't know what the hell a P53 is.
That's
and I've really been rocking with you with this RNA.
Until then.
I don't know what that is. I'm looking at Robert agreeing, and I'm going, well, hell, I agree too.
No. So P53 is a protein that helps to monitor or regulate uncontrolled growth. When that protein is mutated, you don't have that control or checkpoint, right? So then the floodgates of cell growth open, and then all of a sudden you have cells that grow that shouldn't, right? If you mess up a process that is highly regulated, that controls cell division, right? When you look at the fertilization, you have one cell, they mute, then all of a sudden they start dividing. That doesn't just happen willy-nilly. DNA duplicates, cells divide, and there's tens of dozens of sort of checkpoints that prevent things from happening at the wrong time, in the wrong place. And so if you mutate any one of those processes, you get cancer, right? You mutate signaling molecules or you mutate genes, so when people talk about cancer as if it's this monolithic disease, it's not. It's caused by
cancer is not a virus.
No.
But it's AIDS is
okay, let's talk about that. I can answer that question too.
Okay.
So when you talk about AIDS, HIV, the reason why it's been incredibly difficult to you hear people say, oh, the government wants to treat, not cure. This is where the pharmaceutical companies make money. I can assure you that that's not the case. That's hard to believe. But here's what I'll tell you about HIV. Because the person that comes up with the cure gets the Nobel Prize. So being in a capitalistic society, that typically what you're saying doesn't, because people care about them. This is a selfish society. So if I have the cure to HIV/AIDS, I'm publishing it because I want to get the Nobel Prize. I want to get all the accolades that come with the discovery piece. But here's what I'll tell you about the HIV. HIV is what we call a reverse transcriptase virus. So it's also an RNA virus like COVID. So what it does, yes. So this is why I want to talk about it, because, in terms of sort of how it functions, it's similar, but not really. So HIV, its genetic material is RNA. So I don't know if you remember the central dogma, DNA to RNA to protein. DNA is used to make RNA. RNA is used to make protein. All right. So the way HIV...
Miranda, next time we're going to get you so you can draw this out for us.
Okay.
And Mr. Riley, I'm sorry that I'm kind of asking you these questions.
Go ahead.
It's okay. So HIV is an RNA virus. So what happens is it does very similar things. Its RNA gets inside the cell, but instead of our cells saying, oh, let me make protein from this RNA, what it does is it injects also, or it encodes a protein that changes the RNA to a piece of DNA, and then that DNA gets inserted into your genome. So then your cell, when that cell divides, it's not just replicating your genes, but it's replicating the genes of the HIV virus. And the reason why the HIV virus is called a latent virus, which is not the case for coronavirus, is because it can sit there dormant for years without making HIV viral particles. You can have HIV virus this month, contracted this month, and then not be producing virus for a very long time, which is why it's called a latent virus. So every cell that divides, every immune cell that divides that has HIV it's embedded into your genome, right? It's really hard to treat a disease that is embedded into your, where the virus is embedded into your genome. So that, when it's produced, and the second thing for HIV is that it's highly mutating. The coronavirus, believe it or not, despite these two new variants, is not a mutating virus. It actually encodes what we call an editing enzyme, an enzyme that makes sure that there are no mutations when it's replicating. HIV is designed to mutate because the protein that converts its RNA to DNA is not what we call it in science. It doesn't have proofreading capabilities, so it doesn't edit and it doesn't fix mistakes. So when you're designing, for an example, if you want to design a vaccine against HIV or a cure to HIV, it's really hard because, like a wanted poster, HIV changes its hair color, it changes its eye color, it changes its skin color. It has a high mutation rate. Those viruses are not candidates for vaccination. Candidate for vaccine production because they change so rapidly and so frequently. The minute you have a vaccine ready, it's null and void.
So now, again, I'm speaking up for our community.
Flu, you talking about flu now? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm just speaking up for our community.
Right.
We're smarter than you. We went to school. You went to school, but let me say that we are smarter than you. All right, I'm saying that facetiously. However, our go-to in our community is, what about Dr. Sebi?
Oh God.
He cured. Hey, I know I know, but I mean, because if we don't have anybody to talk to,
right?
What else do we go off of,
right,
other than information that's shared? So I have to ask this, right, so that we can then be educated.
Right. So. I mean, I respect Dr. Seppi or Sebi. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I would say that when I hear people, the reason why I think Black and brown people are dying at 2 or 3 the rates of whites and Asians is simply because of our inability to trust, with good reason, what we hear from professionals. So here's what I'm going to say to you there. I don't think that the reason why Black and brown people are listening to Dr. Sebi is because they don't have anybody to talk to. I think that the reason why they listen to people like Dr. Sebi is because they don't trust the people that they hear, right?
Because earlier you said they had earned that distrust from us.
Right, absolutely. They don't trust the people that they hear. So here's what I'll say to you. I grew up in the church. I went to church, I think 4 or 5 days a week. I strongly believe in the Lord, but I'm also a scientist. And I often tell people that I believe that if God didn't want us to think or learn or use science, he wouldn't have given us brains, right? And so one of the things I'd say to you is that it's one thing to have faith, but I feel that God put science here for us. And so I don't, there's always this argument that, most scientists happen to be atheists. I'm not one of them, but there's always where science and religion cannot mutually exist. But I would argue differently. When you're actually studying processes, when you're studying things like viruses, the level of order an organization of a lot of these molecules and these organ, whether it's a virus, whether it's a living organism, you have no choice but to believe that there's a God, because there's no way this level of order and complexity could exist without him. So I want to be clear that I definitely believe in God, but I strongly am a huge supporter of science. And here's what I'll tell you. If the government was out to hurt Black and brown people, all they'd have to do is just not make the vaccine available to us, because we're already dying at levels 2 and 3 higher than anyone else. We're the ones that don't make it out the hospital. When white people, Asian people get the virus, they get the treatment, they heed the advice, they quarantine, they stay in, and they get over it. Black people wait so long to even seek medical treatment. Oftentimes it's too late. So I would say that if the government really wanted to decimate our numbers, all they'd have to do is just tell us that the coronavirus or the vaccine, the coronavirus isn't real, or the vaccine isn't worth getting. And when you look at the current president, right?
Well, he tried to tell us that.
Right.
He tried to say that.
And why? And so the reason why when this virus first hit, I did not want the race and ethnicity data to come out, because the minute they did not know it was impacting Black and brown people at the rates that everybody was scared, everybody was sheltering in. The minute that people knew that it was primarily Black and brown people that were dying from it, everybody's like, we don't need this, the coronavirus why are we sheltering in? Because
at first, Black people was lying to each other saying that we couldn't get it. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't.
We definitely told each other, this ain't for us.
Right. So, I work at a hospital, and the numbers, and I work, in a city with a lot of Black people, and I'm telling you, Hispanic people in Chicago are dying more. It's one of the rare cases where Hispanic people are dying more than Black people. But those two groups of citizens are at the top of the list of people that are succumbing to this disease. And so what I would tell you is that, if you love somebody deeply, just like the pastor tells you to abstain until marriage, you love somebody deeply, you'll quarantine until you get over it. Yes. Because your love could kill that person.
I had a quarantine base, so,
Go ahead.
Miranda, what we've heard, and I'm glad that we can have this very candid conversation. You can give us the truth on what this virus is, how it compares to AIDS, because I've had people to inbox me with stuff about giving us AIDS. I mean, I've heard all kinds of craziness as it relates to this. However, I think the key here is that we have to have the right information, and we have to have our leaders that know that information, which, and when I say leaders, we got to have the people who are in the church. We got to have the folks who are the social leaders in our community.
That's correct.
Those individuals who are influencers in the community, which could be grandma who sits on the porch and everybody come to her for advice.
That's right.
Or granddaddy who comes, whatever. But we have to those individuals need the information.
It's true.
In order to share that information with other people.
So in Chicago, I don't know what's happening here in Texas because I'm not as connected as I used to be. But in Chicago, I just had a meeting 2 weeks ago with about 50 pastors, bishops, religious leaders, the Rush, a lot of the executive leaders that happen to be on that call. And one of the things, because we understand that it's the religion, Black people Black and brown people get our information from beauty shops, from barber shops, from our religious leaders. So one of the things that we have tried to do at Rush is partner with our religious leaders. And one of the things that I've heard a lot of when we were on the call, they were talking about food insecurity, and they were talking about, people have other things to worry about because Black and brown people have been most impacted, not only succumbing to this virus, but also in terms of the layoffs that have happened because of the economic crisis that this virus has caused. And so one of the things that we were going to do was separately, they weren't linked, was we were going to provide free groceries. And the only trade-off was we would just have to educate them. They could make the decision to not or to get the vaccination. But one of the things that, we were trying to do was sort of link education with the need or the food insecurity that we've seen in our nation. And so, we have been doing that. The first round was, like I said, religious leader. The second round will be beauty shops and barber shops, in order to try to reach as many people that we can to dispel some of these myths. Because I do recognize when I am on a lot of these calls with religious leaders that, people think I've heard the term pandemic. I've heard the term, just trust in God and you'll get over it. And it's not that I don't subscribe to that, those thoughts and feelings, but I always think about the parable, right? Somebody's drowning, you pray to God to save, you're drowning in the ocean, and you pray, you say, God, please send somebody to rescue me. And then a boat comes and you're like, no, God is going to rescue me. And then a helicopter comes and you're like, oh, no, now I'm waiting for God to rescue me. And then, a sailboat comes and you're like, no, God said he was going to rescue me. And then, that person eventually drowns. They get to the pearly gates, they get through. They say, God, why didn't you rescue me? You told me you were going to rescue me. You say, well, I sent the boat, I sent the helicopter, I sent everybody, and you said no. And so I think about science in the same way. One of the things that's very different now than in the past is technology. A lot of the technology that we have has allowed us to move faster with creation, at least scientists to move faster with the creation of vaccines. Now, don't forget the H1N1 vaccination was created in 7 months and everybody got in line to get it. And I don't know if you remember the swine flu, but we don't talk about it anymore because we got 80% of the population to get vaccinated. So I'm hoping that we can do that with the coronavirus, but I understand that it didn't help that our commander in chief hasn't been on board, or worse, has sort of been counterproductive to the rollout.
But you do understand our hesitancy as a community.
Absolutely.
So when we think about it being a pandemic, of course, we read as much as we can from different sites in the New York Times and wherever we can get our information from. I try not to get it from Facebook. However, they be finding stuff out. Black Twitter will let you know where something is going wrong. When we talk about, it being a pandemic, Black people, we've had the Tuskegee experiment. Then we had, I want to say it was during World War I, where they used mustard gas on Black soldiers never offered them treatment. And not that one, I'm going to go get this vaccine as soon as if they would put it in this cup, I'd probably drink it right now because I don't know what's in Advil. I'm not really worried about it, but I know that when we have these conversations, we are afraid of what else they're doing behind our back.
Can I ask you a question? I'm glad you said that. So, I was talking to an older gentleman about the vaccine, and we were talking about Viagra, right? Nobody has questioned the side effects.
Hold on now.
What?
Now, Bishop Greenup, you take over this part of the call for me. Go ahead, Miranda.
We were talking about Viagra, right? And a lot of Black men have died taking Viagra. And I was talking to him and I was saying, I don't know if a lot of people understand that Viagra it impacts vasodilation and constriction, which is controlled by GTPase. And I was saying that's why a lot of people, they get the blood pressure drops.
Say that in layman's terms. Yeah, say that in layman's terms.
A lot of times when you take drugs that are vasoconstrictors, dilators, it's like a muscle relaxant. So the blood vessels expand to allow blood to rush, to the penis, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore the body can trap that blood, and then that's how an erection happens, right? Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of Black men die because they have hypertension, right? So all of a sudden you're on your high blood pressure medication, which is expanding those blood vessels so that you don't have high blood pressure. And then you turn around and you pop 1 or 2 Viagra, right? Because you're feeling really vigorous that day. And then you die because all of a sudden your blood pressure bottoms out. And it's quite interesting, how I know, a lot of people are like, yes, Viagra, yes. But when we, they're everybody's like, you have blue pills. But when it comes to something, Viagra has way more adverse side effects. There's something like a vaccination, and especially since it's a chemical. A vaccination is the organic treatment of a disease that as organic as you can get, because it is using your body to fight a disease, right? It's just exposing you to a small portion of that foreign agent so that your body can then do the work, recognize it and do the work. But when you take aspirin, Advil, Viagra, or any of those drugs that, not you necessarily, but you as in the community writ large, right?
I walk every day.
Right. So when you take these drugs, it's funny, the same people that tell me oftentimes, I believe in God, he's going to pull me through. They got that Monday through Friday pill distributor. And I'm like, well, why can't you apply that same, concept with that Monday, Tuesday, why don't you just toss those out, right? So I say that science has allowed us to live 28 years longer than we would have on average, right? So there is some benefit to science. And, I don't know about you, but a virus, that's not how I want to go out. I want to live long into my nether years. And I want to be able to see my kids, my grandkids mature in age, into grandchildren, grandparents, and, themselves. And so I would say to you that, there's one thing to say, we're going to trust God, but we can't pick and choose, just like we pick up that Monday, Tuesday, which like I take a pill every morning for my thyroid. I definitely trust in God, but I'm going to take my thyroid medication because I understand the adverse effects that will happen if I don't, and so I would tell you that there's nothing wrong with being faithful and taking your medication.
I want to say that I appreciate the fact that you said earlier that scientists came up with this vaccine.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Because like you said, there are a lot of people,
right,
black, brown, white, green, who think the federal government.
That's correct. They funded it. I'd be lying to you if I didn't. They funded it, but they fund pretty much every treatment that we have.
Right. So I definitely appreciated you saying that, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm still not taking the vaccine. I mean,
that's understandable.
And that's just me. And I know everybody has their prerogative, and it's not because I feel like the government is just doing something to.
People don't like injecting things. I've heard it all. I don't want to inject things in my body. I don't want to do this. But here's what I'm going to tell you. On your skin, there are millions and billions of viruses and bacteria. Your body, the reason why you don't get sick is because your body over time has evolved the ability to fight these pathogens, right? So this is just exposing you to yet one out of a billion viruses that you're already exposed to on a regular. So whether you want to expose yourself to something or not, it's happening when you go to the gym, good God, you are being exposed to way more than you would ever be in a coronavirus vaccine. So what I would tell you is that, and normally I would say to you, you know what, you had the coronavirus, you're immune, like chickenpox or measles or whatever it is. But the problem with the coronavirus is that you can typically people get even sicker than they did when they get it the second time around, because you don't get acquired immunity. So right now you're quarantined and you're well, you go back out, you can get it a second time. And typically it's worse than the first. And you could have a permanent, 15% of people that have get the coronavirus have permanent hearing loss. Some of them have long-term. I have a student right now. It's been 6 months out, and he is like bedridden because he's now negative for coronavirus, but he can't catch his breath because it destroyed that many of his lung cells. So I would tell you that if you like working out, and then you should love your lungs enough to get the vaccine.
He only lift weights. He don't do cardio. So let me ask you this.
First of all, that's what you're not going to do. That's what you're not going to do, Mister. I walk every day. Don't do that. Don't come for me because I didn't send for you.
I have a question.
No, you've done enough talking, Derek. I'm
well, I have a question.
Right now, okay?
The doctor is talking. I was just asking about blood types because I was told that certain blood types are not getting as sick. I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question. You have heard that people with O blood don't get as sick as people with other blood types. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. The vast majority of Black people in America are O positive. Something like 80, 90%, something like, I can't remember what the percentage is. Anybody in here not O? You're not O.
They don't know their type.
They don't know their type.
Robert don't know what type of blood he got. He think he got the blood of Jesus.
Because you're supposed to be positive. That's how I remember my blood type.
Okay, so most American Blacks, the vast majority are O positive. Now, I just told you we're dying at 2 to 3 times the rate. And maybe that's the study that you're referring to. They looked at it in healthy individuals. But remember, Black people have a higher chance of having hypertension, heart disease, overweight, lung, COPD.
Overweight.
That's correct.
So it's the underlying conditions, because I'm understanding that when you have like 2 or more, y'all call it something else.
Comorbidities. Okay. So the reason why Black people are dying isn't, you could have a perfect blood type that's going to make you less sick, but that means nothing if you have diabetes, you are, a transplant patient, you have some kind of sickness. That is where none of that matters, right? Because the underlying condition combined with reduced lung function is what takes you out.
So let me throw this in there. I'm not being defiant and saying like, yo, I'm not gonna take I'm not taking the vaccine. It's just, it's just my prerogative. Like I got sick with COVID, right? And after I got sick.
Did you hear what she just said?
I heard what she said. But also, again, we're dying I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but what she says about our communities not being healthy at all, like compared to other communities, that contributes to why we're dying more.
But you were healthy and you got really sick.
You did. Thank you. Thank you for your health didn't help you. It may have stopped you from passing. You had any underlying conditions, but you had 101-degree fever, if I heard you correctly, for 10 days, which, do you know the brain damage that happens?
Hell, and he was already had that.
Yeah, brain damage, the sustained temperature over that period of time can cause brain damage, permanent brain damage. Thank God you only use less than 20% of your brain. But you need here. So I was looking up the blood type. So about half of Black Americans have O positive blood, right? Half, a little bit over half. So, even with that, more than 50% of us compared to other races and ethnicity, I think Latin people are 53% of Latin America is O positive. And those are the 2 people that are dying like crazy, right?
But is it because that's because of the comorbidity?
That's right. But Caucasian, 37% O positive. Black and brown people, there are more O positive Black and brown people, and yet we're dying at higher rates. But on top of that, at Rush, we had Black people, healthy Black people, vegan Black people dying of COVID. It just depends on the viral load. Let's say, for instance, your body detects COVID late and 50% of your lung function is gone. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. You're out. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to be intubated. Here's one thing I don't think Black people understand: how lonely it is. You talk about lonely for quarantine, but you can turn on your TV, you can get up, you can bathe, you can do this, you can do that. But the people in the hospital unit, let me tell you what happens. When they decide to intubate you, they start talking crazy. They start saying, oh, you know, you have a last will and testament, you know, you have a will, they let you FaceTime with your family and friends to say goodbye. Then they intubate you. They put you in a unit where nobody can visit you, and you slowly die alone. And that is what I don't think. When I see people, that's why nurses are near the breaking point, because they see people and then the messed up part is that people learn that their loved one died sometime the next day, right? Oh, he passed yesterday night. You know what I mean? Like, that person, I had a coworker who lost a guy that works for me, crying on the phone because he lost his father Saturday. His father was a conservative Trump supporter. And his father did not believe in masking up, felt like God had his back, caught COVID, was immobile on his floor for 3 days because he didn't even have the strength to get up and call the ambulance. The only reason why the guy that worked for me went to the hospital, flew to where his father was because his father stopped answering the phone. He had the bus break down the door. He found his father just lying there for days. He got his father together, sent him, but his infection had gotten so bad. By the time he signed a waiver not to be intubated, and his father just passed Saturday. This was a healthy, older man, but healthy. And, you know, I don't think that people understand what dying in isolation means. I mean, you can't do it. You even get too tired to eat. You know what I mean? That's how low your functioning your lungs are. Some people are just too tired to even eat. Their oxygen levels drop. You may like to work out. Can you imagine that being taken away from you? No.
I mean, when I was sick, I couldn't work out, you know. So,
but what happens if what if the damage is irreversible and you can never work out again?
Clearly, he's got brain damage now because he ain't heard nothing that you say.
I'm listening. Because
I get it. It is your prerogative, but what I'm hoping is that 80% of us get vaccinated so that we can afford him the protection of herd immunity.
He trying to sell his shirt. It say reckless faith. You're being real reckless by not taking this vaccine, sir.
You know what has been interesting these past few weeks? I don't know if you've heard it, Bishop. The Pope, the Catholic Pope, has saying it is a religious obligation. The Pope, that's how bad it is. And here's what I'll tell you from a hospital standpoint. I mean, people are vicious. Like when people are skipping the line, there are fights in the hospital about who's going to get it. If this was something to destroy the Black community, they would not be fighting to get it. Like when I got my notification to get it, the spots filled up in 28 minutes. I was angry. When the next time I sat by the computer refreshing it every 30 minutes so that I could hurry up and sign up, because I wanted to make sure that I was giving my two sons who are asthmatics the protection. I travel a lot. The worst thing that I could possibly do is make the two people that I love sick. I could never think about burying my sons as a parent. So the minute I had to fly to Chicago the next day. Like I hopped on a plane to go get my vaccine. That's just how important it is. And and it's so hard to come by this vaccine because of the poor rollout. If you get a chance to get it, let me ask you a question. Do you have a measles vaccine?
Me?
Yeah.
I would know.
You have the mumps. When you work, did they make you submit a immunization record?
I'm sure when I was younger, I got them.
And did you die?
Oh.
You're getting older because you got them, right? What about polio?
Yeah.
Did you get polio? Have you ever seen somebody with polio?
I haven't.
Their legs are typically because of vaccines.
Hell, my uncle had it. They cured that. It's over with.
Yeah. And I just, I know that it is your prerogative, but I would say to you that the people I don't even think about it for myself. I don't think I could ever forgive myself for passing it if I'm asymptomatic to somebody that I love.
So let me say this. Let me say this for the people watching and listening. I'm not telling you not to go get the vaccine. That is not what I'm saying, because I don't want it to seem like I'm telling you to not listen to the scientists and the doctor here who clearly went to school for all of this and who is telling us that we should go get vaccinated, right? But again, I'm just speaking for me.
Right. That's your prerogative. And I just hope that we all give you that herd immunity. But everybody else in the room.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying for now, I will say the fact that that's why I said, I'm glad you said that scientists have.
Yeah, it was scientists.
The ones who developed this and came up with this.
And there are 4 vaccines, right? There's not just one, there are 4.
Right.
Right. So do you all know what they are?
No. Please educate us.
Lay them out to us. Yes.
So there are 4. There's one by Pfizer. That's the one that got rolled out first. One by Moderna. I know everybody heard Moderna. One by AstraZeneca, Oxford University, and then one by Johnson & Johnson. So the 2 that I think are being used here more than, the 2 more popular ones here in the US are the one by Pfizer and Moderna. They were created 2 separate entities, right? I mean, many scientists, they were tested. So just to give you some background, the Pfizer one, the most popular one, that's the one that you hear has to be at negative 80. You heard about that when it has to be super cold.
Yes.
So that one you get, they're all every vaccine except for, I think, the Johnson & Johnson, you have 2 doses, right? You have the first one and the second one. And so the Pfizer vaccine, you start getting detection of helper T cells. It's about 7 days after you take the first vaccine, but you don't get 95% protection until 2 weeks after the second dose. All right. So they tested, they did a clinical trial where they tested it on 43,000 people. I can't remember which one was Brazil. There were 2 countries that they did these test studies on, but the Pfizer one there was a clinical trial on 43,000 people to determine if there were any adverse side effects or whether or not getting the vaccine superseded any side effects that anyone may have. The second one is Moderna. Now that one, you don't see immunity until 14 days after the second shot. Okay. And then that one, the nice thing about that one is you could store it in the freezer, not the minus sub-zero. People call those sub-zero, but you could store it in the freezer and it has a longer shelf life. And it's also an RNA vaccine. Now, the other 2 are what we call attenuated viruses. They're like the flu vaccine, where it's a weakened form of the virus so that it gives your body a chance to fight it. That is the AstraZeneca Oxford one and the Johnson & Johnson. The problem with those 2 is that their immunity that you get is about 70% instead of 95 if you use the Moderna Pfizer one. So
what about what we're hearing about? There was a doctor who took the vaccine and then he died a week or 2 weeks afterwards. You know what I mean? These adverse side effects that maybe is scaring people from saying, well, damn, let me let y'all get it first. Black people, we think we're gonna turn the gremlins after midnight if we eat.
Right.
Kind of like the iPhone. I don't get the iPhone when it first come out.
Right. So I would say that, you know, it's okay to get in line last as long as you get in the line, I would say. But, you know, when people say, I want you to test it first, it has been tested. Like I said, there's about 40,000 people in each clinical trial. Plus, they gave it to first responders first. So, you know, it has been given to, I think, about 6-7 million people. I don't remember how many million people that have had it, but the number's low because of the rollout. But there have been millions of people that have gotten this vaccine already. And I'm telling you, healthcare workers are fighting over it, skipping the line. There have been, you know, conflict about who should get it, who shouldn't get it, because it is something that we recognize. Like, I don't want to keep living in fear. I want to be able to walk out boldly and say, you know, I'm 95% protected against
This might be out of line, but I think it need to be said. People don't even be wearing condoms all the time, and they worried about taking this vaccine. Hey.
Well, the chances of you contracting a disease that's going to kill you from unprotected sex, even AIDS, people live very long with AIDS, right? You contract coronavirus, you may not live 2 weeks.
Yeah. Hey, Apostle Greenup, you've been quiet for a while. I know you have some wisdom for us because you're the senior on the call, and you've heard our discussion so far. And I thank you, Miranda, for your insight, for your candidness as it relates to this. And then, of course, you've offered us some solutions on some of the things that we can do to really help our community talk with some of our trusted advisors. So, Apostle, you've heard this discussion. Give us some, what are you sensing? What are you feeling? You know, you were exposed. They didn't even tell you that the person had it. And you didn't have the symptoms, but your wife did. Talk to us about that. You give us some insight.
Well, listen, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Well, what I want to do this.
Mute your cell phone. Mute your cell phone.
Use the phone. Let's do this. I'm very curious what we hear now with the young lady here now.
All right.
I don't think we can hear you. Maybe if you unmute your phone, you have to mute your computer. You can't have them both on at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, Apostle, you could unmute your computer, and I will take your cell phone offline. We can't hear you.
You and Apostle Greenup sharing Wi-Fi, bro. I'm gonna be honest with you.
You know, he and I, we do this all the time. We have no issues like this.
Maybe you unmute his where he's live streaming his face.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute them. Apostle, if you could go up to the your face, and you'll see where it says unmute. And see, I'm asking you to unmute it. There you go. Right now, yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, let me share this. Everything we talked about, number one here, I got so many.
It went out.
People that are doctors, nurses, pharmacists, I'm aware of all of that at age 65. I've had the stroke 8 years ago, so it should be there.
All right, Apostle, we can't hear you.
Still can't hear me?
Take your phone. Use your phone.
Let me use the phone.
I can hear him fine now.
*6 on the phone.
He's going to get some more immunity.
Derek,
That was not me. That was Robert. Mr. Riley, I was being good. Robert over here not taking the vaccine, talking about immunity.
You started this. You started this.
Hey, that was a private chat that does not need to be shared. I'll be honest with you, man. Bishop Greenup said he had a stroke, but one thing he ain't lost was a stroke. Because Bishop Greenup say, I know the cure. Huh? I know the cure. It ain't no vaccine. It's
Dr.
me.
Miranda, can I take that over the vaccine?
No, you cannot.
Not at all.
Apostle,
I'm kidding.
we need for you to unmute your cell phone. *6.
Who is helping him?
Sister Greenup is helping him out on there.
Got it? Is it working now?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Perfect. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We got you.
Let's do this, number one. I hear the
Move your
scientists,
phone
all
up
of
close
this.
to you. Move your
Can
phone
you hear me
close to
now?
you. Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's do this, number one. The fact that there is no conflict between God and scientists. Okay.
Mhm.
I wanted to be a doctor. I got doctors, nurses, farmers, I got all of that. I think the key is how do we come together without constant confrontation? We need to have the faith of God, but also got to have facts. Taking care of your body. When I had the stroke, couldn't see, couldn't talk for 8 years. Now there's no medication. Changed my diet at age 65 because something is the wisdom of God. Number one, God made your body, not the doctor, not the nurse, not your mom and your daddy. God made the body, the temple of the Holy Ghost. So we need to come back with the wisdom of God. I like the fact that scientists, I got doctors, nurses, how can we bring together some synergy to have some wisdom, whether you take it like many times, I'm almost 80 years old. She had herbs, all kinds of things. She had pancreatic cancer. Let's deal with the fact that let's have this conversation so that we can have some wisdom, because some people are going like me. I didn't do medication. When I had the stroke, I had to do it. And now at age 65, no medication, none of that all. With the stroke, left brain was damaged because I was in. Tell what, I'm not going to trust in no doctor. No, I'm going to trust in God, and God will use people. God is the source of healing. God will use people for resource. So number one, let's not trust doctors. I'm never going to trust the doctor. I'm not going to trust no man because you're licensed to practice. That's why y'all have tests. God don't have tests. Jesus didn't have no kind of tests. He healed the sick. So let's bring together so that both of us can understand the wisdom of God. Like the young man said, I don't eat no kind of medication, something like that, because now when I had the stroke, that was forced to do because the left brain couldn't remember nothing with the stroke. I believe here today, this conversation is real good, Bishop Riley. Let's have this conversation. Let's trust God, and also God's going to use man, doctors, nurses. I believe all of that, but what's going to give to each individual? The wisdom of God. Let's pray for that. Thank God for the young lady here today, because number one, you are testing. You got resources. You're saying God is not a scientist. God is God. He's a spirit. Let's call together the physical, the spirit, and the body. Because once again, God's going to use everybody that He will be glorified. If God's not going to be glorified, God's going to be no medication, no doctors, no nurses. This is good, Bishop Riley. I'm quite sure we can keep this going with this situation here, so we can pray for everybody, whether wisdom, to use it, don't use it, diet, nutrition. I've had no meat or fish in 8 years. I've changed my diet because of that. Everybody may not do what I've done. So that God give everybody particular wisdom, a knowledge, and an understanding. Let's pray for everybody so that God will be glorified ultimately.
Okay, and thank you very much, Apostle, for that, those comments. And I know that we really want to dig in this a lot deeper, but we've been on the call for 1 hour and 30 minutes. I want to respect your time. But guess what? Next Monday, we're going to come back. Next Monday, if you're available, we will take questions from people in the audience. And what that means is in the chat, they'll send me a question. I'll field those questions and we'll work from there. But I want to encourage you, each one of you, to one, you have to tell your story. You have to share specifically what happened to you, because that's going to educate people because the reason that you're on this call is because you are an influencer. There's some people who listen to you. You are the grandpa who sits on the porch, or the barbershop person, or that person. They may not call you the pastor, but I'm telling you, you are influencing them. And since you're influencing them, what you say carry weight. We saw what happened based on what a person in a position of power said, and now there is 500 plus people who are going to have a federal record because they listened to what a person in a position of influence said. What I'm saying to you is, what you say has power and it carries weight. And next week at 7 o'clock, if you are available, we'll come back again and continue this conversation around this issue of one, trusting the government, trusting systems, trusting the vaccination, and we need to come up with a conversation about how to help individuals. For instance, take vitamin D and zinc. So we need to walk people through what do you need to do to protect yourself before you get the virus, which can actually help you fight the virus off. So next week at 7 o'clock, we're going to come back and have some additional discussions as it relates to this. I want to thank each one of you for being on tonight. I want to thank you for your candid conversation, your candid question. We did talk about a whole lot of other stuff, but guess what? That gives us the ability to say to the people who are out there who are listening to us, hey, we're going to be real about this. And there are solutions that are going to work, that's going to keep you alive and going to keep your family members alive, who, guess what? Whether we like it or not, our community has a lot of underlying conditions because of those pork chops, those chitlins, and all this other stuff that we've been eating. And because of that, we have all these issues that are going on. And now we have a disease that is killing our people because of our eating habits and all kinds of other stuff. I want you to know, I love you guys. I look forward to being back with you on next week. God bless you all. Have a good night. But at 7 o'clock next week, we're going to come back. Thank you all very much for being on tonight.
God bless
Nice to meet
you.
everyone.